Anora, the latest from Sean Baker. It's like a Cinderella story, really, right? That's what the synopsis is all about. When I read the synopsis, basically a stripper, sex worker has a meet cute with this young rich guy who's the son of an oligarch from Russia. They go and have a happy fairy tale marriage in Vegas, and it's all fun and dandy until the goons show up. And then it gets chaotic. Then it becomes kind of like more of a caper and family mobster gangster situation almost. It has the energy of like a Safdie Brothers movie. Like you've seen Uncut Gems, that movie. It's very anxiety inducing. What's most interesting, I think, about this movie to me is the relationship between Igor and Ani, because Igor, I think, is pretty much presented as an alternative to Ivan, the spoiled rich kid who has this transactional relationship with Ani and builds her hope up, and he just treats this like a fun vacation, while this has a lot more stakes, a lot more impact on Ani. But then Igor is representative of an alternative, one that's more concerned with her well-being. He's also like in her same social class. He's just a worker under the family who does the grunt work, right? In the final act or so, he speaks up and tells Ivan's parents that he should apologize to Ani, for what he did, for misleading her. And in other moments like that, there's moments that where the film in general, the language of the movie focuses on Igor. As the movie progresses, there's like little cuts to close-ups to him, or cuts to his reaction, to start building the idea that like, oh, he's a decent person, as a way to like gradually redeem him from the moment where he breaks in and starts tying Ani up. The first thing I thought when I was watching this was that, oh, I wonder if this is more kind of like an self-insert from the director here. The director maybe considered himself one of the good guys, one of the nice guys, and he wanted to represent, like, hey, like not all men suck. Wanted to make sure to put into perspective of a guy who's capable of improving, of changing, unlike Ivan, who is incapable of that. He's gonna always be like he is, it seems, right? Maybe 10 years he'll be better, he'll grow up and mature, but with his privilege, with his wealth, it's unlikely he's gonna change or really be pressured or need to change, right? He's not gonna ever need to change. And like the rich don't need to change because they have the money to overcome any criticism, really, right? And Ani does critique Igor for assaulting her in the beginning when they're sitting in the home, right, at the rich guy's house. And then she also says that like she was almost surprised that he didn't rape her. She was like, oh, if the other guys were around, you would have raped me. While Igor's like, actually, no, I'm not a rapist. I wouldn't have done that. Why would you think that? So it does feel like a bit of a commentary on the fear that a lot of women have when it comes to dating, or just men in general, particularly goons, I guess, like Igor. And then another thing is that like she says that like he had rape eyes, right? And that's why she thought like he would potentially be a rapist. But that's also kind of like representative of maybe the fears that Ani and the trauma that she's gone through, perhaps as a sex worker, just general as a woman in this world, where she has to pick up on these cues for her own safety, and she can maybe misinterpret certain cues like a glare as something a lot more violent than it is. And then I think what really shows an unfortunate side effect of the patriarchy instilling this fear in women, and particularly sex workers, is the moment where she basically calls him, she says he's a faggot or gay because he didn't follow through with the rape. She then goes up into her room, the room upstairs, and they're all by themselves at that point. No one's around. Like, he could potentially do it. It's definitely like a homophobic slur and quite offensive thing to say, equating, if a man doesn't rape a woman in that situation, then he's gay. That's very extremely problematic. But I think it's kind of reflective of her character, and it makes it feel like authentic, because that's like something like an edgy thing that a 20-something might say, you know, someone who's like perhaps a casualty of the patriarchy, you know, part of this rape culture. It's not like a joke that like the filmmakers, the actors, or the producers, or anybody, or the writers, or anybody, Sean Baker, who did all writing and directing, are trying to promote as something they support or anything. I think it's more just a reflection of this character. You know, when I heard that, it felt a little offensive to me, but I don't particularly think it was endorsement like a documentary or something. It was more like showcasing the type of character, and how, like, you know, Annie herself was flawed, which I think makes her character more interesting versus a sex worker with a heart of gold that's like inoffensive, you know. In the end, it like makes her character much more complex and interesting and realistic because of those flaws, because of, you know, that she's like a young 20-something who does these edgy homophobic jokes, like provocations. You know, it also felt like a provocation, you know. It's a dangerous provocation. Also, maybe she like has already been through so much in the movie. It could also be like kind of self-sabotaging, you know, depressive state where she's like provoking him. But he passes the test. Igor passes the test. He doesn't go upstairs at all, even, you know. She probably would even accepted or consented to do some sex if he went upstairs. But I guess the fact that he didn't even attempt it, you know, made kind of like, I think, showed to her that like, oh, I guess, you know, maybe this Igor isn't that bad of a guy as I thought. And so the next day, Igor drives her back home, and we get like really emotionally intense and complicated ending. He reveals that he has the ring, you know, because supposedly the goons, the bad guys, would take the ring back for the family. You know, the ring that Ivan bought her to marry her, you know. Igor had it. He took it and gave it back, you know, as some sort of consolation prize, I guess. And he also got like is going to get 10K for the whole thing. You know, a good bonus is having that ring too. It was almost like a pseudo proposal almost of this alternative love interest for Annie, you know. The guy that tied her up is now possibly the best choice in this movie for her. She's in the car, he comes back in, and she has a tear down her face, you know. After all this, she's feeling emotional, like, oh, like this guy's actually, he's the only one who actually cares about me during this whole ordeal, you know. The only way she can think to thank him is by being intimate, sexually intimate. She gets on top of him, and he even leans in for a kiss, but she refuses it. And then she breaks down, and it's the ultimate release, you know. She cries. It's the most emotional we've seen her get throughout the movie, and so it's really powerful, and it kind of like shifts the tone of that scene there, which at first I thought was a bit odd, because it almost felt like oh, okay, so it's kind of a movie about the good guy winning at the end, which is Igor, and kind of like shifts focus away from Annie until that breakdown. Then it became a little bit more clear. Finally, she's able to have a release, an authentic, like a real release, a build up that finally broke after all that she's gone through in this movie and beforehand too. And she can share it with the only guy in the movie that sees her as actually human, someone she can have class solidarity with, you know. And that's the moment it becomes like a satisfying ending, you know. Then it fades to black, and it ends there. We don't really know what's going to happen afterwards. You can interpret it different ways. I feel like, you know, it's of course it's purposely ambiguous to what you think could happen later. You can be a little bit optimistic and a little bit rosy and feel like they're going to end up together and be a happy couple. But I think realistically, what matches better with the tone of the movie is that like they'll find a connection, you know. Maybe they'll date, you know, for a bit, but not necessarily for long term. I do appreciate that ambiguity. It felt real, you know, because of how messy and emotional it was. Mikey Madison in an interview, I think, she does clarify that it is about her emotional release. It is about her, I guess, that release and that, I guess, catharsis at the end. Baker, on the other hand, he feels that it signifies that Annie is going to be all right she's going to be okay. And that by refusing that kiss, she is affirming her control. She's regaining her control and her agency at that moment by being the one who initiates the act, by being the one who refuses to kiss, and the one that decides to break down and seek comfort with Igor. She's going to be in control of her life moving forward, as opposed to the movie where she was being strung along by Ivan and then threatened and persuaded to annul the marriage and all by the parents. She's not part of the upper class, and the people in power, like Ivan's parents, will never allow it. That ending was a sign of class solidarity to me. It felt like, as a socialist myself, I appreciate when movies, don't sugarcoat things and make it seem that like class mobility is such an easy thing. All you need is to like work hard and you can achieve your dreams to become a billionaire or something. It's not simple as that. As a film, I think it was a really well made film, and I think like the tonal shifts in this are really well done and smooth. Like it goes from a feel good fantasy, high energy, sexy rom-com into more of a gritty, hectic caper, and then it goes to a family drama with an ending that sticks with you. And what elevates it most, I think, is Mikey Madison's performance. The home invasion scene felt really cathartic, because she was treated so badly, like background noise. Watching her fight back so viciously, felt really good. And then, her talking back and asserting herself with the rich family, also felt cathartic, even though she was a bit naive and an offensive character. You can see that she was learning and growing throughout. You can really feel her development as a character. It was just a good performance. That's Anora. What did you think? Did you like its energy? Did you like its aesthetic? How did you feel about Igor and Ani? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, it's up there. It's probably up there on my top movies of the year, I think. We're getting into that award season coming up here, so there's going to be a lot more top of the year contenders coming up. Well, I'm going to keep watching them. I'm going to keep watching those movies. Where's this, Yep. Right. I guess I'll see y'all next time under the moonlight. Bye bye.